It's tough to be a gamer today if you are a big fan of single-player games or traditional co-op games that would allow you to play through a game's story with a group of friends. I grew up in an era which can be considered the glory days for these types of games. We had a lot of games and franchises that allowed you to play by yourself or even with friends, either online or sitting next to you on the couch. Game franchises like Halo, Gears of War, Uncharted, Red Dead, Mass Effect, Borderlands, Fallout, Skyrim, Assassin's Creed, BioShock, Dead Rising, Left 4 Dead. The list goes on and on for those types of games, but I think you get the point. If you grew up playing games during that Xbox 360 and PS3 era, then you know we were eating good when it came to these kinds of games. Once the industry discovered just how lucrative it was to focus on games that were always connected online for multiplayer and live service, well, that was the end of couch co-op and playing through simple yet super fun single-player games. The industry's obsession with making money is sad as the overall fun experience of gaming has taken a back seat to dollar signs, and companies have made it known that they prefer multiplayer/live service games today over anything single player or couch co-op. We do get some single player games still today, but it seems like a lot of them are recycled open world type of games. So in today's video, I want to talk about how the industry has changed over time and why it's disappointing to see these types of games almost disappear at this point. Well, Warner Brothers is the inspiration for this video, and that is because of some of the interesting comments they have made recently on some of the games that they have made and what they have observed from the rest of the industry. Warner Brothers experienced the tale of two halves recently. Last year, they had a lot of success with the game Hogwarts Legacy. The game experienced record-breaking sales. I believe it was 22 million copies sold last year, and I personally played the game, and it ended up being one of my favorite games of the year. Then earlier this year, Warner Brothers releases Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. The game received mixed reception, and I know at one point it had an open critic score of 60 out of 100, and it still has mixed reviews on Steam. And this is even after they delayed the game so they could rework things because people were not happy with what the game originally was when information came out about it last year. And I'm not going to sit here and say that every live service game sucks and that they're not successful, because that would be a lie. But it's crazy how even when there's proof that single-player games can still be successful and make a lot of money, it seems that these companies just want to ignore that. And there's proof of that with the comments made by the head of games at Warner Brothers. JB Perrette recently made a statement about the company and their plans going forward. It appears the company is going to double down on more live service, free-to-play, and mobile games rather than single-player console titles. This shift in company focus has people worried that we may never see a sequel to Hogwarts Legacy. Let's take a look at JB's statement. Within the studio segment, we're doubling down on games as an area where we think there is a lot more growth opportunity that we can tap into with the IP that we have and some of the capabilities on the studio side, where we're uniquely positioned as both a publisher and a developer of games. He then goes on to say this. Rather than just launching a one-and-done console game, how do we develop a game around, for example, Hogwarts Legacy or Harry Potter, that is a live service where people can live and work and build and play in that world on an ongoing basis? So I ended up looking up JB on LinkedIn to learn more about him because I wanted to know how long he's been working in the game industry, and I was not surprised to see what I found. Yeah, the guy has worked at places like Warner Brothers, Discovery, NBC Universal, and GE Capital. No background in games at all. I knew this before searching for him because there's actually already an answer to the question he posed in his second quote. Back in the day before live service, developers would provide us with DLC. Downloadable content has existed for years for all sorts of games. It worked for single-player games like Fallout, Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, The Witcher 3, GTA 4, etc., etc. Even multiplayer games before the days of live service started off with DLC content drops in Call of Duty and Battlefield specifically. People had to pay more money for this content, but it actually worked. People liked it, and it also helped extend the lifespan of these games over time. And see, that's the problem with gaming today. It's run by corporate businessmen and women that don't play games. They don't have a passion for the industry and understand what games truly mean for the millions of people who play every single day. It would be nice if game companies and developers would actually take the time to make content that feels fresh and unique. People love the DLC that came out for franchises like Fallout and Far Cry and even Assassin's Creed. And why is that? Well, because we got brand new stories, areas to play in, characters, and much more. It wasn't just, here's a few new weapons, outfits, and missions. These were almost like new mini games attached to the main game. Like, if you put the effort into these games, then the players will check it out. They will spend the money on more content. It's happened in the past. There's proof to this. There's successful formulas that were made years ago. It's not that people don't want to spend more money on games, it just comes down to the content and the quality of that content. It should be an easy home run for companies to make games based on the Harry Potter universe or Star Wars or Marvel and DC, yet they continue to either not make more games within these universes or they flop. For God's sakes, look at the recent release of the Battlefront remaster. I know most of the issues come from the multiplayer side of things, but people like myself spent a ton of hours playing those games either with friends or even alone. Good games lead to good replayability. If a game is designed well and has a lot of memorable aspects to it, then people will enjoy playing it, and they will come back and play it often. There's no reason why the new Battlefront games have failed. It's mind-blowing that the Suicide Squad game received so much flack that they delayed the game and then reworked some things, and then the game still comes out to mixed reviews. Look at the Marvel's Avengers game. Why the hell does that game have microtransactions? Why are we paying for loot in a game about superheroes? It shouldn't be hard to make a game based off of heroes from Marvel or DC. That alone should be an easy selling point. Marvel Avengers came out back in September of 2020, so right in the middle of the pandemic and only a year removed from Endgame, so the energy and momentum for Marvel was high, and obviously people were looking for something to do while being stuck at home. This should have been an easy win. There's actually one more quote from JB that I want to bring up, and then I'm going to move on to something with EA. This quote is about the difference between Hogwarts Legacy and Suicide Squad. That's a great business when you hit like Hogwarts Legacy. It makes the year look amazing. Unfortunately, we also have disappointments. We just released Suicide Squad this quarter, which was not as strong. It just makes it very volatile. Now, the word volatile just pisses me off. I feel like this quote is an excuse. The difference between the two games is that you have one really good game with high quality and the other game is just not as good. The problem with live service is that companies want the game to be good months, maybe even years later. The developers at Rocksteady apparently have 4 seasons worth of content planned for Suicide Squad over the next year. So the game will be good then 12 plus months from now? Cyberpunk 2077's redemption story is cool, but I personally don't celebrate it. We waited 8 years for the game to come out, and when it came out, it was a mess. Then finally, 3 years later, we finally get the one big DLC drop that they have promised for a long time, and the game is finally in a good form. I don't celebrate that. It rubs me the wrong way because I was a player since day one. I bought the game and played it through all that bullshit right then and there at the start. I was not planning on paying full price for a DLC 3 years later, and I don't feel like playing a 3-year-old game that is supposedly finally in good shape when a ton of more games have come out since then. Back in the summer of 2022, EA sent out a tweet that actually pissed off a lot of people. This was the tweet. They're a 10, but they like playing single-player games. Now, this made people go off and roast EA. I mean, this is not really that controversial. I understand, obviously, worse things have been said on Twitter. But, really, it's kind of tone deaf in my opinion. They eventually backtracked with this tweet, and then they tweeted out, "Roast well deserved. We'll take this L because playing single player actually makes them an 11. A company that made a name for themselves with single player games really made these comments. They made a name for themselves with games like Dead Space, Mass Effect, Medal of Honor, and even most recently the Star Wars Jedi games. It just makes no sense, and it actually shows us the proof that there are people working at these companies that are literally tone deaf and are out of touch. I'm a fan of all kinds of games. I enjoy single-player games, multiplayer games, but I'm at a point in my life where I don't have a lot of time to play anymore, and I really don't have time or really feel like spending a lot of time grinding out one particular game in general, in order to earn enough credits to buy the battle pass and unlock everything, and get the extra content in the ways that live service does things today. I want to play more games like Gears of War where I could just come home from work and play by myself or hit up a couple of friends and we play in a relaxed setting. I want to get immersed in more single player games too, like The Last of Us and Uncharted. I really don't want to hear the excuse that the AAA market is volatile. It is because companies keep making half-assed games that are cash grabs. It's not about making a complete game that is full of content and clear of bugs and glitches. People still care about games with good stories, characters, and settings. Single-player games don't even have to be that complex or complicated. Look at the Spider-Man games. People spend hours listening to music and swinging around the city. If you can come up with a fun gameplay loop and take the time to create a good story, then the gamers will come. And I really do miss the days when I could simply just play co-op through a campaign like Gears of War or Halo. I hate that everything has to be online and gameplay has to feature large groups of people. I just made a video recently on how open world games need to change. They are bloated and repetitive. It seems that a lot of the single player games that exist today are coming in the form of large open world games. It is truly a struggle to get through some of them because they're just too big, there's so much to do, and it's just really time consuming. These open world games are very expensive to make too. I still don't see why the DLC formula used for games like Far Cry and Fallout can't be used today. But again, we have corporate financial people that ultimately call the shots and run these companies today, and it's all driven by business models that are built with the intention of making money and not making memorable gameplay experiences. I can honestly keep going on this topic, but I don't want to make a video that lasts an hour. But hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the state of the game industry and where we are with single player games and co-op games today. I truly appreciate all of you for checking out this video. Please go check out other videos on the channel, maybe subscribe if you're interested. You can also find my content, the audio version, on podcasting platforms. Just Google Analyze This Podcast. You can also find me on X and TikTok, X at AnalyzeThis_YT, and TikTok at AnalyzeThis54_YT. Thanks again and take care.